Hello there, survivors and friends, welcome back to the channel, and here we are with episode 4 of
Concept Limbo.
Episode 4 already, where has the time gone? If you've missed any of the last 3, then you should really go and check them out, as in my strip search of the dev blogs and Trello board so far, I've fished out all manner of concepts and designs that were laying dormant in forgotten crevices, such as robots, fishing rods, handcuffs, cars, bikes, horse riding, harpoon guns, and higher tier bows. In the last episode, I focused on weapons concepts, but there were far too many for one video, so here is part 2, and to begin with, we're going to look at a couple of suggestions from the player base that were good enough to be highlighted on the Playrust website. So come with me as I grab the knob and rewind the clock to 3rd of February 2015, where on community update number 26, the spotlight was shone on the work of a certain Mr. Frank Walls. Now, if you haven't heard of Frank, he's a professional illustrator and game designer who also happens to be a massive fan of Rust. His suggestions and artwork for the game are extensive and, if I'm honest, worthy of an episode in themselves. He was also the brains behind the original 2D Rust base planner. Anyway, the article started by showcasing some of his ideas for wrecked cars and randomly spawning piles of machinery that could be hit with higher tier tools to get scrap metal, cloth, leather, car parts, tubes, pipes, springs, and diamonds? I think he might have gone a bit too far with this one, but you get the idea. We've come here to talk about weapons, however, and the design that I actually wanted to show you came straight after these. These are Frank's ideas for a chainsaw. He had originally posted them on Reddit the day before, and this is what he had to say about them. "I'd like one of these, please. Useful for gathering resources quickly, cutting through wood walls in seconds, stone walls in a minute, and dismembering your enemies. It's heavy, loud, and slows you down, so you'd better bring some friends. I updated it to have changeable blades, one for cutting through wood and one for cutting through stone or metal." He then went on to explain the main reason why he'd come up with this idea. "I'd rather see tools like this for raiding than C4. Would be awesome to saw through walls with this while having a couple of guys guarding you. Conversely, it would be thrilling to defend your base against this. The sounds of it outside, and then the wall falls and this chainsaw guy comes crashing through a cloud of dust." Someone then questioned why Frank hadn't just drawn a normal petrol-driven chainsaw instead of an electric one being run off of an unwieldy back-mounted generator, to which he replied, "My thinking on this was that it's a raiding tool rather than an offensive weapon. The backpack is there to balance out the power it would have. I envision it slowing the player down to compensate for the damage. Plus, a machine strapped to your back billowing smoke and feeding power to a Frankenstein chainsaw looks cool." Well, I can't argue with that. Shortly afterwards, he posted a more polished version of the artwork, complete with a motivational slogan on the blade, and that was that. It wasn't adopted by the Facepunch team, but interestingly, on a side note, and in line with what Frank said about the raiding mechanic, some ideas had been kicked around by the team just prior to this that could make raiding a riskier venture than just throwing a load of C4 at a wall and running behind a bush. For instance, in reply to a Reddit post on January 31st, 2015, complaining about how easy raiding in Rust was at the time, Peter at Facepunch replied that the team had been discussing alternatives to C4, and the one that he liked the most was a Payday-esque drilling mechanic that required the raiding party to do a bit more work. His explanation of how this could happen was picked up and illustrated the very next day by a member of the community, and this is the suggested process. Top tier metal doors would need to be drilled, like a safe. A drill would be expensive, large, and maybe even require you to carry it slowly, unarmed, two-handed style for added vulnerability. You place it on a door and fire it up. It would take a certain amount of time and fuel to break through, and in the meantime would be making one hell of a racket which could alert nearby Newmans and the homeowner. The idea was very well received at the time, and although it was well over a year ago and Rust has moved on quite a bit, many aspects of raiding haven't changed at all, and I think that concepts like this are still just as relevant. But what do you think? Leave me a comment, please. Anyway, I seem to be going off on a bit of a tangent here. I started talking about weapons, and I've ended up on raiding mechanics, so let's get back on track and move on to another community concept, this time rewinding to March 2nd, 2015, where in community update number 33, this concept by France Rust for a basic flare gun that looks like a kind of modified Ioka was featured. As he put it, it's useful for spotting your friends in the map or for coordinated actions. It can be used as a decoy for curious guys who think a noob used the flare gun. It can be used as a weapon, but it has low accuracy and low damage. You need to reload after each flare used. There were some good suggestions on Reddit about it, including lighting up bases for night raiding or firing them into a sniper's tower to blind him, and this is how the community envisioned it would look if it was ever included in the game, which it hasn't been. Yet. This isn't to say that there haven't been normal flares in Rust, there were plenty in Legacy, and they gave off a fantastically eerie glow when lit, but did you know that we kind of have them in the current game too? I say kind of, because just like the hacksaw weapon I showed you last week, there's actually a world model that can be spawned with the right plugin, and it's also in the item list in the F1 menu. This version looks like it's meant to be green instead of red, and comes with handy instructions as to which way round it's supposed to be held. More than that though, if we take a look at Devblog 63 from June of 2015, we can see that the view model and animations were already done back then too, so why can't we use it? No, hang on, what's this? Oh yes, I should also mention that a flashlight has been sneakily hiding out in Rust 2, and here's the world model. I'm mentioning this in amongst weapons because, as you can see, as well as dazzling your enemies, there's the potential to pistol whip them with it too. Again though, this is something that got really far into production only to be shuffled into a cubbyhole somewhere and covered in cling film, presumably until a later date. Talking of hitting people with light-emitting objects, did you know that the lantern was initially intended to be an item that we could not only carry around with us, but also bash people on the skulls with? Yep, here's the view model and animation for it from Devblog number 31. It's a shame we can't do this though, it looks jolly painful. Moving on to the Trello boards now, and take a look at these kinky devices. I'm not sure I'd like to be on the receiving end of the bottom left one. It looks a bit unhygienic if you ask me, although I'm sure Borat would approve. These were all slingshot ideas that were designed by Megan Tupper a really long time ago now in June 2014, but as one commenter mentioned, slingshots definitely belong in the game, though instead of another minimal damage gun alternative, it would be neat to see them implemented in such a way that they took a long time to load, but if you headshot someone it would knock them out temporarily. 30 seconds, and you could loot them during that short time period. That would be pretty interesting, although I'm not sure how much they'd actually get used. Could be fun for games, I suppose. Now, at first, I must admit this one doesn't look much like a concept. Something as familiar as the trusty rock is a staple of Rust and has been with us since we've had hands to grip it with, but this bit of art came from a time towards the back end of 2014 when the design for the rock was undergoing a bit of a makeover, and I just wanted to highlight the notion of perhaps there being some different types of rock out there, such as an extra rare one with gold veins. To be fair, this is probably only going to be any use as a status symbol, but I certainly wouldn't say no. Personally though, I'd really like this rock in game, and I'm working towards making it a reality. Talking of rocks, we get given them as part of our standard issue spawning kit, mainly because without some sort of implement we're pretty much useless, as unlike in other games such as Ark for instance, we somehow seem to have lost the ability to use our fists. Well, what if we could, and what if we were able to strap things onto them for added pain factor? This concept was explored by Megan nearly a year ago now in Devblog number 64, and here she said, "This week I managed to finish off the first batch of ideas I've been playing around with, knuckle dusters and hand protection to go along with the punching animations and attacks we plan to add in the future. I like the idea of bare knuckle fighting causing some degree of injury to you, much like it does in real life. In order to protect yourself you'd need some form of padding, and to be more effective you'll need something like metal to make your punches really sting." So there you have it, the ability to punch it out in the streets and forests of Rust is on the cards, or was on the cards. Obviously nothing has happened with this idea in the years since, but there's always hope. Now, there's one more concept that I wanted to show you from the community, and I've saved it until last, because this could potentially be the most powerful weapon to ever exist if it were to be included. Whoever wielded it would have power beyond imagination and would hold the fate of humankind in their hands. Yes, the Nokia on a stick. Featured on the very first community update right back in July 2014, this weapon would not only grant one-hit kills, but would also never break or need repairing. And on that bombshell, that's all the weapons I have to show you. Make sure you watch the previous episodes of Concept Limbo and stay tuned for the next. Thank you for liking, subscribing and sharing this video. Please leave me a comment down below and I shall catch you all very soon. In the meantime, stay rusty. Cheerio.